Welcome back to High Stakes. Today, we will be discussing the following NCAAF matches that is happening on Saturday, September 30th, 2023. We will be providing our team, total, and prop picks for the day. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. If you want access to our premium picks, you can check out our Patreon page. You can find the link to our Patreon page in the description and comment section below. Nevada versus Fresno State. Lay it with Fresno. To have overall defensive numbers like that despite giving up 30+ in the first two games of the year shows just how in sync Fresno's defense is right now, from play calling all the way through execution. The potential is there for that unit to really make life a living hell for Nevada's offense on Saturday, and with a 4-point downward move on the total from its opener of 54, there is plenty of similar sentiment regarding how successful Fresno's defense will be this week. In last year's meeting, one big 73-yard pass and one garbage time TD in the final 2 minutes of the game accounted for the 14 points Nevada scored. The Wolfpack are 0-2 ATS this season when scoring fewer than 24 points as well. With the suggestion already there that it's going to be Fresno's defense that controls the game, Nevada's team total is 11.5. The case to lay all this chalk with Fresno is pretty strong. Even if the underbettors that have driven the total down don't fear Fresno putting up 50 themselves, eventually the Bulldogs' offense will find success moving the ball here. Nevada's defense is just too bad not to find it. With bets offered out there like largest lead of the game O/U 26.5 and Fresno touchdowns scored at 4.5 with over at -125, the expectation is 30+ for the Bulldogs, and there is a good chance it comes rather easily. I believe this is just an awful matchup at the worst time for this Nevada team, as they are not going to be able to sustain many drives at all against this Fresno defense, and the likelihood that this one gets ugly in a hurry is pretty high in my view. Nevada has to sustain drives to have a chance, if for no other reason than to not expose that league-worst defense for too long. When that can't happen, point spreads may never feel big enough for this team. At the same time, back-to-back weeks where they probably should have ended this long losing streak take a lot out of the gas tank. Going up against a team that's going to be hyper-focused regardless because of their own long winning streak just has blowout written all over it. Also take under 50 points. The big picture might be 4-10 ATS for Nevada during this 14-game losing streak, one that includes a 41-14 home loss to Fresno, but the most recent history also has them on a 2-0 ATS run heading into this weekend. Last weekend it was a 35-24 loss at Texas State as 17-point underdogs in a game they actually led 17-0 at the half. An awful third quarter spiraled from there, as Nevada actually needed a garbage time touchdown to sneak through the back door after theoretically being up 34-0 at the half with that spread. How Nevada reacts from suffering a loss like that to end a long drought is always tough to handicap, especially when there are plenty of negatives involved like being on the road, expected to get smoked, etc., etc. These guys could easily fold up shop here if Fresno's putting a hurting on them early, as last week was also not the first time that Nevada has allowed points in bunches. USC scored 66 on them in the opener, and the other ATS win during this 2-0 ATS streak came versus Kansas 2 weeks ago when a 10-10 halftime score turned into a 31-24 final. Finishing games is just something this Nevada team doesn't have right now. The flip side of all that is the fact that Nevada's really faced some quality opponents along the way this season, as Texas State, Kansas, and USC are a combined 11-1 SU this year heading into this weekend. Nevada was well inside the number for the entire 60 minutes of the Kansas game and was inside the number for over 55 minutes last week as well. That's some marked improvement for a team that's at least being somewhat competitive on a weekly basis. Yet, you still can't completely cover up the fact that Nevada is the worst football team in the country in terms of opponent yards per game, 561.3, opponent points per play, 0.691, and opponent yards per play, 8.8. What makes matters worse for the Wolfpack is that Fresno's defense ranks in the top 25 in the country in those exact three categories. The big move on the total means that any underlook now means betting into a much worse number, and that's never a great idea for the long-term health of your bankroll. That's especially the case in this game, as all it takes is Fresno to march down the field on their opening offense drive and the in-game total will be much closer to the 54 that it opened up at. That's got to be the best plan going forward for those looking at the under. That's how I'll be approaching this game, because there is still some concern that Fresno lights up a disinterested and worn-down Nevada defense to the tune of 40-plus points. Doesn't take much for Nevada to work their garbage time magic to cash in over 50 or 49.5 tickets at that point. I just don't see how Nevada comes close to pulling their weight in getting this one to go over though without benefiting from multiple turnovers, and it's actually Fresno who comes in with the plus 2.3 turnover margin, good for third best in the country. So there really isn't anything to fear in that regard. So give me a small stake in going under the current number, with the bigger portion of that meal hunting for a better number shortly after kickoff. Alabama versus Mississippi St. Take the Crimson Tide giving the points. The Crimson Tide picked off a nice win in their SEC opener, holding a top 15 team to just 10 points. Their defense held the Rebels to 3 for 14 on third downs and just 305 total yards on the day. With an onus on stuffing the run, Alabama gave up just 56 yards on the ground and this season has allowed an average of 102.5 yards rushing per game, tied for 28th best in the country. Linebacker Dallas Turner had 2 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss against Ole Mississippi. On the year, the junior has 4.5 sacks, tied for third in the country, and 2 forced fumbles. Alabama's offense enters this week averaging 30.3 points and 364.8 yards per game this season. They were under average last week with 356 total yards. Quarterback Jalen Milroe went 17 for 21 throwing the ball, but managed just 225 yards and 1 touchdown. He was also picked off once and now has 3 interceptions in his last 2 starts. In 3 games this season, the sophomore has been sacked 11 times. Freshman Jalen Hale had a couple of big catches in the game for 63 yards, including a 33-yard touchdown reception. The emergence of a top receiving option could help Milroe settle in and be more comfortable. Alabama owns a 15-game win streak straight up over the Bulldogs. Mississippi State hasn't scored more than 9 points in 7 of the last 8 meetings and has been shut out twice in the last 5. Bama is also 5-0 ATS in the last 5 meetings and 2-2 ATS this season. Mississippi State S1-3 ATS this year, dropping their last 3. The Bulldogs lost by 27 points against 14th-ranked LSU. Things could get worse in this game. They are heavily reliant on their passing game, and they don't do much to disguise things with their rush. This gives the Crimson Tide a direct place to focus, and that will be on Rodgers. Alabama's big front will be in the QB's face all day, and that should force mistakes, something Bama will take advantage of. Also take the under. This will be the second-ranked opponent for the Bulldogs in their last 3 games, and they didn't fare so well against then number 14 LSU 2 weeks back, losing 41-14 at home. Things were a bit closer last week as the offense dropped 30 points and fell by just 7. Will Rodgers aired it out, throwing for 487 yards on the day but completed just 62.5% of his passes and had just 1 touchdown and an interception. Lydiatrick Griffin was the target of the day, catching 7 passes for a whopping 256 yards. He also caught his 3rd touchdown pass of the season and has 388 receiving yards on the year, 5th most in the SEC. The Bulldogs' offense has been invisible in this series, leading to the 2 teams going 8-2 to the under in their last 10 meetings. The Crimson Tide has completely shut them down, allowing them just 8.2 points per game in that stretch. Last season, they held Rodgers to just 231 yards and a 50% completion rate, with no touchdowns. On the other side of the ball, Bama is still working out their identity as an offense. Milroe looked excellent in terms of accuracy last week, and he continues to grow with each week. That said, I can't see them exploding on Mississippi State's defense entirely. Not enough to carry us over, at least.